values for two different numeric variable. It is also used to observe relationship between variables. So mo di siya katong kaning scatter plot diri kaning mga dot dot na kanang mag dot dot siya then mag-ana-ana then mag-form na siya mga graph. Then ang plot dito sa tayang code na naay plot na nakabutang so function gihapon siya. Then mo to siya ang open and close parenthesis kay sets or generic function pero katong housing.df das dollar mid v then housing gi define na mo siya ma'am as file name and classifications kay katong based sa imong explanation kay kining mga housing.df tapos medv kay apil man siya dito sa classification kung asa na bilong ang tahay katong mga values na naa dito siya i-classify na mo to ang nakabutang sa katong sa taas sa table. So mo ra to ma'am.
Okay. Next group. Group 2, ila.
Ma'am.
Diri na. Histogram and box plot. Kisa sa group 2.
Si ma'am.
Na ako diri.
Wala, dili mi ka present, ma'am.
Nga naman, di ba naman mo i-answer?
Oh, pero wala, di ba ang code mo nang i-present, ma'am?
Pwede rang kini i-show rang ning code. Ako rang kanira akong gi-share. Tapos, i-discuss na lang.
Patay na.
O katong inyong answer, pwede ra katong inyong answer mo to inyong i-discuss.
Jess, asa man to, Jess?
Ay, ikaw na po.
Basahan na. Ma'am, kuan lang mo ganang ang pagsabot lang na mo umamba.
Kana lang. Okay ra na siya. Kay mag-discuss pa man ko further later.
Jess, asa man to?
Kato lang inyong answer i-present.
Patay tayo dun. Wait lang, ma'am. Pwede basahon ka, ma'am?
Oo.
Okay. So, muli siya muna, according sa mong research, ma'am, ang histogram, gamitan na tong hist something, tapos katong open and close parenthesis na function. According sa yung definition, ma'am, this function takes in a vector of values of which histogram is plotted. So, among pagsabot, ma'am, according sa kato ganing mura graph good, ma'am, bali na siya data given daan siya, ma'am, ba? Na siya mga data, ma'am, tapos pag gamiton nimo ning hist, ma'am, murag mag-prompt na siya diretsyo og histogram. Murag iyan ang i-graph daan, ma'am, good. Tama ba? Oh my gosh.
Yes, correct.
Ay, tama yun, ma'am. Okay. Mura siya mong pagsabot, ma'am. Niya ang box plot. Wait lang, ma'am, ha. Kailangan siya pa. Ang box plot definition can be created for individual variables or variables by group. The format is box plot x data, where x is a formula and data denotes and data denotes the data frame providing the data. So, ma'am, ang among kuan ma'am, based sa katugining chart nga gipakita ma'am, sa amo according sa among na research mo bakit di ba na siya ano na siya yung sitaw na siya okay na siya given data ma'am no tapos na siya maximum and minimum ma'am tapos so ni siya wait lang nakulbaan man ko wait lang an exact ma'am naglisod ko ma'am sorry naglisod ko ma'am naglisod ko please sorry
Ay, sorry.
ay oo wala siya ma'am kanang siya nga graph ma'am kinasabdan na mo na siya ma'am bali gikuha niya ang median ma'am no tapos gikuha niya ang lisod ma'am lisod ko ma'am
Mm.
okay sa
Mm.
sorry ma'am naglisod ko explain ma'am
Love good.
Sige, sige.
nakalbuan
Oo na to.
nakalbuan
Okay, naatay representative sa group 3. Si Wendell, asa ni siya nga group?
Group 3 na.
Rosary yata swindle mo
Oh, si Wendell.
go Del
Inadilot niya ang wifi.
Inaya, lag.
Hino yung signal, ma'am.
Ay, na yung signal.
Ito, ma'am, nag-con, ma'am, nag-con mo sa mong presentation, ma'am, is Jasper, tapos wala si Jasper, ma'am.
Asan siya?
Uli sa kuwan, si Jai, ma'am, kinagpa-load pa.
Sige, sige. Balikan na to ang code na to sa to ang ay mag-present sa ko lahion ako akong presentation or kining kuan na lang akong screen na lang pang exam ako ning mga
Ay, salamat. Ma'am.
Wala si ma'am. Ayun. Yeah.
asa mo to
Sobrang.
R Bili ma-share ang ako ang R. Mag-entire screen na lang ko. So, mo ni ang interface. This is our environment sa R. Okay? Ang first na to na activity or first na data visualization to present is the line chart as discussed by Flor. So line chart is our graph that is used for showing time series, and this one first example na to is we use the data set na the first or the top left graph here, the first graph is we use the Amtrak data set to create our example line graph. So we have here the environment of R, and we're going to demonstrate how to create the line graph using our data set Amtrak. So if you're gonna download the data set that I sent to you, you have to make sure that it's on the same path as where your R is or your script in R is saved. So this one is saved in drive D. You can click on the change directory to double check or to change it. So let's go to, because my file, my data set is in the folder in Drive D and in our folder, our exercises. So my data sets are inside this folder. So I'm gonna click this as my path for this our script. And before we can actually use the commands in R, we need to first import the data set. So the code for that is using the read.csv function. So this one is amtrak.df equals read that, or this is the command to assign to this data frame called Amtrak. So this is basically creating a data frame called Amtrak, and then that will be coming from the amtrak.csv. So we have a data set in an Excel file with an a CSV extension. So we're gonna export it, or we're gonna get read from the command itself, read.csv. So we're gonna open this file, or the script will open this file and save it or assign it to a temporary, this is like a temporary storage of data, and it's a data frame. So let's do that here. So amtrak.df, then read.csv. So I'm going to demonstrate this codes because this will be your course activity. You will give the code for you to answer your course activity problems. So here we have this amtrak.df, and the next is we have to import the library forecast. So that means the line graph. For us to create a line graph, we need the forecast library to be imported to our R script. So not all functions are readily available in our R. So we need to import some important libraries. So again, we cannot use the TS. For example, this is for time series. This is the time series function for creating a time series analysis. So we can't create a time series analysis if we don't import the forecast library. So, but before we can actually call the library forecast, we need to install it. So we have to use the command install that packages, and then the name of the package is this one, forecast. So if you are prompted to select a mirror, so you're gonna select the country we are in, Philippines, then click OK. So here the package forecast will be downloaded and installed in this unit. So it's already downloaded. Now we can use the library forecast after this. And the next code is ridership.ts. So what we want is from the data set, this is the Amtrak, or this is the housing. So let's open first the Amtrak data set. So if you already opened it, you would notice that there are only I think two columns. So we have the month and the ridership. Okay, the number of ridership and per month. That's what's inside the Amtrak dataset. So we want here to assign these values to the time series by using the TS function. TS, and then you call amtrak.df. Then we use the $sign ridership. So this means that we are getting the data from the ridership column. So mo ni siya ang data nga ato ang i-process for the time series. Okay, so or for time series analysis. So this is basically the time or the year, and this is the data. So we'll be using the ridership column here. So kini siyang pasabot ani, we have the Amtrak data frame, and we will be using specifically the ridership column. Then we'll have to, in the TS function, we also have to specify the start. Then here we'll be using the C function. So we have C is the starting, the start of the time that we're manipulating here is given in the data set, and that is from 1991. This pertains to kini siyang month. Okay, it starts with unsa man ni siya. This is January. Okay, January. That means the time in our data set starts with January 1991. Then it ends, the last time is March 2004. So we specify the end of our time series analysis is March 2004. 3. And then the frequency is 12. So the frequency that we can assign to time series, we have actually 1 for if it's annual, 4 if it's quarterly, and 12 if it's monthly. So since our time here is from January to December, so our frequency here is monthly, and monthly is the value for frequency for monthly is you have to specify 12. So we enter next is, now we have this function. This is the one that we use to show the plot. So plot ridership.ts. This is the time series that we just created. This is now the data that will be shown in our plot. And then we have the xlab parameter for the label of the x-axis. So it will have a label of year, and the Y label is ridership in me. Yeah. Ridership in 00S. Then we have the um, Y lim parameter. $1,300 and 2,300. So this is the Y lim parameter is basically the data that will gonna show, okay, or the values of ridership. The starting will be from 1,300. That's the value in our y-axis. So that's from 1,300 to 2,300. So we now have this line graph. So here the y-axis will be from 1,300 to 2,300 approximately, and then the years are from 1991 to 2004. Okay, so it will be automatically adjusted here. You will not exactly see the 1991 and other years. So it's automatically aligned and arranged. So this is how you're gonna create line graphs using R. So we use the plot to show, and then the TS for line graph or time series analysis, because line graph is used for time series analysis. Now we also have the ggplot. ggplot is ggplot is another library that we can use to create a more visually pleasing graphs. So we can use the ggplot. After installing the ggplot, using the install.packages, you can, since I already installed it using install.packages, so I can already use the library ggplot or ggplot2, and then the command is this ggplot using the data housing.df plus for line graph we'll be using the GUM point, and then the AES short for aesthetic, then we have the X value, dili pa day ni mao. This is for scatter plot. So we're not gonna use here in our example. We don't have a ggplot for the line graph. So this will be later. So we now have the next graph is we have the scatter plot. So we'll have this first scatter plot. Okay, we'll have to use again the plot function, and then we'll be using the house.df Okay, but we can't use this one since we haven't added the data set first. So let's add the data set. For the housing data set, we have housing.df, read.csv, and the file name of our dataset is Boston housing.csv. Then we'll plot using that data, the data frame that we just added, the housing.df. So again, this will be a temporary data frame that will hold all the data coming from Boston housing.csv. So this is our our data set of Boston housing. So we have these columns and plotting it using scatter plot is we'll have housing.df, and we'll have to specify here the column, because in a scatter plot you need two numerical values for the x-axis and for the y-axis. So we have here the med v for our x-axis, and then we also have to specify housing.df lstat. This is the second column that we're gonna use in our scatter plot. So lstat, for our scatter plot, we'll be using the med v and the lstat. So med v will be for our x-axis and lstat for our y-axis. Then we'll have to specify the label of our x-axis to be equals to mdiv or m, and for the y-axis label, that is lstat. So it will show us the plot. So this is now our scatter plot. So para asa man ni ato ang scatter plot? What is the purpose of a scatter plot? Anyone?
Kuan ma'am, kanang ginagamit siya para makita ang relationship between two variables, the year and the kanang kuan katong sa to ride something ridership.
Rider. So this is to show the correlation, no, or the relationship of two variables. So in this example, we have the mdiv and the lstat. So these two variables. So we will see using the scatter plot if they are positively related or negatively related. So again, the mdiv is the column that is intended for the median value of owner occupied homes. In the values are in $100,000, the median value. for specific area. And then we also have the LSTAT is the lower status, the percentage of lower status of the population. Okay, so if the scatter plot shows that as X decreases or as X increases and Y also increases, then that means there is positive relation. Otherwise, it has a negative, the two variables has negative relation. Okay? So, unsa maning nakita nato sa scatter plot, how do we interpret this one? You can interpret that as the X increases, Y decreases. Tama ba? It's a downhill. Paubos siya. No? So again, if the X is increasing and at the same time the Y also is increasing, okay, that means they are positive. Since this one, the X increases but Y decreases. No? The Y decreases. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. So that is
Yes,
how
ma'am.
we interpret our scatter plot. So that means LSTAT and MDEV don't have a positive relationship. So that's how we create the scatter plot. And then we have the ggplot for creating a scatter plot, and that is by the use of the ggplot function housing.df. We'll use the housing.df data, which came from our CSV, Boston housing.csv. Then we'll be using the GUM point for creating a scatter plot using ggplot. So we'll use the AAS function, and X is equals to LSTAT as we showed earlier, and Y is equals to MEDV. Then we have the color is equals to navy, and alpha is for this is just for the design. So if we use the AAS, this is specifying the appearance, such as the color and the alpha. Alpha is the transparency of the image. So we have the GUM point to create the scatter plot in a more pleasing visualization, and we have to specify the data to be used in the x-axis and y-axis. So we are just simply showing here the relationship of the two variables, LSTAT and MEDV. So enter, and it will show the scatter plot here in a more aesthetic view. Okay, that's our scatter plot. That's how you create a scatter plot using R. So next we also have we have the bar chart. So we want to show in our bar chart, we want to see or to show the CAS data and the mean the mean med v. So CAS is going back to our data set. The CAS is the it's a categorical data. It's 0 or 1. So its value is 1 if the area is bound to or bounds the river called Charles River. Otherwise, its value is 0. So it's just classifying the area whether it's bound to Charles River. And it's 0 or 1. The value is 0 or 1. Then we also have in our bar graph, you also have to analyze the med v, the median value of owner occupied homes in 1,000. So if that area is its median value, and if it's categorized as 0 or 1 in terms of it's bound to Charles River. So we'll have to use here the CHAS data, or the CHAS, this one, the CHAS variable and the med v variable. Okay, these two columns. These are what we're gonna analyze in our bar graph. So going back to the code, so to create the bar graph, you'll have to create another data. So in our example, that is data for plot, and then it will be, so that means this data for plot will be coming from the two variables that we said earlier, from CHAS and med v. So we will get those two columns. So to get those columns, we'll have to use the aggregate function. Aggregate, and then we'll have to specify what is the first column, and that is the med v. And then we want the value of that to be aggregated by CHAS. So we'll be classifying the med v by CHAS. And then there is the aggregate function used here is the mean. Okay, that means we're gonna get the category per CHAS. What is its average med v? So that is what we mean by this aggregate function. We will get the data of the med v in average med v per CHAS. Okay, nakuha to ninyo. I-compute niya ang med v, ang average med v. Average, the mean. Average med v per CHAS. So, for example, in this, or the result of that will have two columns. So that would be the CHAS and the average, the mean. Let's say this is just an arbitrary name, average med v. So since there are only two categories, 0 and 1, and the average med v for those data or track whose CHAS is 0, yung sa iyahang average, that will be computed. At the same time, the average med v of those tracks whose CHAS is 1. So that will be the result of this aggregate function. There will have two columns and two rows for 0 chas and 1 chas. So there is an error. Mali. We have a wrong spelling wrong here. Aggregate. And then next to that is we're gonna use that data. The result of that, this will be the data that we'll use in our bar graph. So we'll have the command. First, we'll use or assign the column names for our data for plot. So data for plot will have the names chas and mean, med, div, med v. Okay, so what we're doing here using this command is we're just assigning the name of the attributes. Okay, the data for plot is this. So we're assigning the first one to be chas and the second one, the second column to be main med v. And next is we use the bar plot data for plot, and then we have to specify the column mean med v, the names.arg equals data.for plot chas. So these are now our data to be used in our bar plot. So the first one is the this will be the y-axis, and the second argument is now the more of the predictor or the value of our x-axis. Then the third argument we have here is the x label, the label of our x-axis, and the next is the label of our y-axis. So we now have this one. So the label is in our x-axis is chas, and for our y-axis is average med v. Now there are only two values of our chas, 0 and 1. So there is an average of maybe this is 22 med v. And for 1, the average is more than 25. So this is the average med v for those track whose chas value is 1. So nawala si Kath. Then for ggplot, you can use another alternative plot using ggplot. So we have ggplot and the data for plot. We have the GUM bar for bar plots. Then the AES function, X is the CHAS column, and then Y is the mean MED-V column, and then stat is equals to identity. So we have used here a stat equals identity because there is another way to create the GUM bar or a bar chart using GUM bar in ggplot, wherein we have to automatically, or the GUM bar will automatically compute for the values to be assigned for the bar chart. But this one, since we already have the data which comes from the result of our aggregate and saved in data for plot, then we'll use that data as is. So we'll have to use start equals identity, the stat equals identity. So no need for other further data aggregations here or calculations. We'll just use the data for plot, as is. This is, by the way, open parenthesis. So what is the data in data for plot that will be used in the GUM bar as is? No more other calculation needed. Kulang.
Ma'am, question, ma'am. Ma'am, ano magamit ang ggplot, ma'am, after mag-present atong kuan, ma'am, katong iyang bar chart na, ma'am. Ano sa'yo gamit sa ggplot,
Kuha lang
ma'am?
niya siya, alternative lang niya siya na mas visually kuan siya, presentable, kay naa siya color and other formatting.
Mm.
I'm gonna close this one because we forgot the closing. So there's an error here. Forgot the closing parenthesis diri. So we now have our ggplot for the bar, our bar graph. Then another one is another bar chart, but this time we'll use the percentage of cat med V. Okay, this data here, instead of using the med V, we'll be using the cat med V versus the CHAS. A while ago we used CHAS versus med V and the average of med V. This time we'll be using the percentage of cat med V. So the same process in our example for the bar chart, we'll be using here data for plot. Again, we'll be using the aggregate because we'll have to get the two columns. So housing.df, I'll be using the cat med V. This is for our y-axis, and this is the category is they are aggregated per CAS. So that's in the housing.df column CAS. And then the function is again mean. fun function equals to mean. By the way, in the aggregate function, if you want the average, to compute the average, you'll have to specify the value of the fun, short for function, to be equals to mean. That is for the average. If you want the sum, you have fun equals sum. The maximum number out of a group or an aggregate data, group of data, you'll have to use the max or mean for minimum value of a group of data or set of data. So you have mean. We want to get the mean of cat med v, and then next to that is we'll have to use the bar plot. Data for the plot. And specific column is mean. Oh no, let's have first the names of the column names of the result of the aggregate function. So that is names, data, that for plot. Chas, and we'll name those result. Have mean, cut, med v. And then the bar plot command, we'll be using the data for plot as our data and specify the mean, cut, med v. This will be our y-axis data, and since we want the percentage, so we'll multiply it by 100, and then names that are equals data dot plot, the data dot for dot plot, chas for our x-axis, and x label equals chas, and y label is percentage, percent. It's the y label, percent of cat met b. Okay. We have now the x lab for x label and y lab, percent of cat med v. Then close. So let's see the bar plot of that, the second bar plot. So this one, forecast whose value is 0, we have this percentage of cat med v is more than 15. Then for 1, that's more than 30. Then we can also use ggplot. So ggplot, and that's ggplot data for plot plus gum bar as x equals chas, and the y is equals to mean, the name of our second attribute, mean, cat, med v. Then stat equals identity. Kulangan na po siya diri. So let's close this. So our ggplot, this one, Okay. This is the result of our ggplot for bar chart. Next, nana ang group 3. Anyone from group 3? Sige na, ito ang group 3.
Ano, ma'am?
Okay. Ikaw, Jai? So, group 1 and group 2 already presented their assigned topics. We need now the presentation of group 3 before we proceed with the demonstration. Kinsa man ang mag-present sa group 3?
Wait sa, ma'am, ha? Ma'am, i-describe lang ako itong heat maps.
Mm-mm. Ikaw na mag-present, Jai.
Naglibog ko ang kiba. Magod may nagkasinabot kung kinsay mag-explain.
Ha?
Iasa na ko si Soy Soy, ma'am. Okay, basi gusto po dyan mo Ako na lang ikaw na akong nasabtan, ani ma'am, ha? A heat map is a graphical display of numerical data where color is used to denote values. And heat maps are especially useful for the two purposes, which the visualizing correlation tables and visualizing missing values in the data. Heat maps also useful when examining a large number of values. Makita sa graph, ma'am, na naglahi-lahi ang color, which is the dark color is the large values, and the light colors are the smallest values. Sa
Okay na ka, Chai? Ajay?
Maurat ako na ma'am, nasabtan sa nabasa.
Sorry. Okay. So, let's go back to our next demonstration that is showing you how to create these charts, histogram and box plot. So, we'll be using the hist command for creating a histogram. So, automatically, a histogram will be created if you use the hist command. So, going back to our R, So we'll have the command hist, and then we'll be using the housing.df column medv. So this will be our x-axis, and then the lab or the label for the x-axis is, or x-lab is medv. So it will give us the histogram. This is the histogram now of our housing data, the housing or Boston housing data set using the medv column. So when we say histogram, it just shows us the frequency of the specified data. So since we want the frequency here of our medv value or medv data, so it gives us the histogram showing the frequency of that medv data. So here for medvs shown are 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. And these are their frequencies. So next is we have the ggplot. So I will not just let me show you the ggplot again, since we already have used here the ggplot, so we don't need to write the library ggplot anymore as shown in the example PDF. We can directly use it since we did not close this entire workspace or script window. So we'll have to directly call ggplot and then specify the data frame that we're gonna use, and then we'll use gum histogram for ggplot and AES command. X is, or the data that we want to show in the histogram, is medv. And then the bin width, we specify the bin width. Of course, this is what we need to specify in a histogram. Bin width is equals to 5. So that is here the ggplot is this one. So for ggplot, we specify here the bin width, but for normal histogram, so you don't need to specify the bin width. It's automatically assigned in the histogram. So this is, it depends on your preference. What's the width of the bin that you'll be showing in your plot. Next graph we have is the box plot. So the box plot is another graph we use to simply show the distribution of our data. So housing.df medv and housing.df chas. The X label is chas and the Y label is medv. So this is specifying our y-axis and our x-axis in our box plot. So we want to show the box plots of the box plots per chas. So there are two values for chas, 0 and 1. So we'll have two box plots. So for 0, we have this box plot showing the distribution of our data, the MED-V, according to chas 0. So this shows the first quartile, or the quartile data, and at the same time we also show the box plot of chas 1 here. Next is our heat map. So for creating heat map, we have here the heat map command. Then we use the core method to specify the data, to calculate the correlation. Core is short for the correlation. And the row here, row V equals NA, and col V equals NA. So meaning we'll be using the values for rows and columns specified in housing.df. So we already have values of our housing per that's per column. So we'll use it as is. So we'll have to specify row V to null or without value, row V no value, and col V no value, because we want to compare the value of each attribute to itself. So this is the result of the heat map. So no value. Okay. Cream and using the ggplot, we have heat map .2 and then core again for housing.df, row V equals to false and col V equals to false. Then dogram is none. The cell node is round core. Core housing 2 and note. Okay, note 2. Note. So the first one, the first heat map here, we have this doesn't have the value shown in our graph. This one naman, ikaduha, heat map dot 2. This will simply show us the values. There's an error, dendrogram. Okay. Dendrogram none. Okay, the error is could not find function heat map dot 2. So basically it's not yet added into our workspace. So we'll not use it here. You can simply download it, search in Google how to download heatmap 2. So we'll not use it here. So next is we'll proceed to the second one. It'll just show you this later or next meeting after I download it in my unit, the library needed for that. Then let's proceed to ggplot. So ggplot's heat map is we use the library reshape. So this is, we need the library ggplot. We already have downloaded and installed ggplot, but we don't have the reshape. So we can install that packages reshape. So just have to follow these commands to create your this heat map using ggplot. So we only have more than 10 minutes So that's it for our demonstration. So you can try this. The rest for ggplot and heatmap 2 for you to explore. Okay, so you'll have to I leave this demonstration of heatmap 2 and ggplot for heatmaps in your own exploration. But you need to install first Reshape in order to use the core.mat. So basically, this will be the result with heatmap 2 with values. So kanina, without values, you can't see the values in our heatmap. So in this example, there are values specified in the heatmap. So this just shows the correlation of each variables. So for example, the correlation, by the way, there is a formula to compute the correlation of two variables. So we'll not discuss it further here. We'll just show you automatically how it is computed using R. So for example, the correlation of cream and cream is 1, of course. And the correlation of cream and of the variable cream and Zn is negative 0.2. Okay, so and so on. So the correlation of, for example, of CHAS and TAX is negative 0.04. So it shows the correlation of each variables. Do you have question? So your course activity will serve as your will also serve as your first exam, since it's medyo that was I there's some difficulty, no? You have to use R commands to achieve what is being asked in your course activity. So those are basically data visualization tasks. Wala na question. Wala na may question.
Ma'am, na kay video tutorial na ma'am.
Kaning akong gi-present karon,
Yes ma'am.
kuan na ko ni siya gi live stream na ko sa YouTube. Maulang to.
Thank you, ma'am.
Kay,
Mga na lang sa link, ma'am.
sige. Kay, we are required man good sa school na
Ma'am,
mag-upload,
channel, ma'am.
mag-record sa amo ang klase, online na klase, no?
Okay, ma'am.
Or pwede pod mag-record mi daan para ihatag sa inyo ha ang recorded. Pareha sa akong ginhatag sa inyo ha before, recorded to siya daan. Then, ihatag na ko ang link unya kay time consuming manggod kaayo kung mag-record pa ko. Pagkahuman mag-upload pa. So, mag-live stream, kung mag-live stream ko, diretso na siya uploaded sa YouTube, 'di ba? Dili na ko magsige. Wala na ko, di na ko mag-set og time para mag-upload sa pila ka oras nga video and so on. So, mao to siya nga live stream na lang akong ginagamit or
Ma'am, among kanang kailangan na gamiton man ba R compiler mo ra na mo dapat i-download ma'am na gamiton.
Dili, dili tong online compiler. Ang gamiton niyo kaning R. Download jud sa
Studio,
R.
ma'am.
Ay pwede pod ang R Studio,
Okay, ma'am.
pero kini akong gigamit karon is dili ni siya R Studio.
Or console na, ma'am.
R. Ay send na ko ang download. Ay di ba nag-send ko adto og link?
Yes, ma'am, pero duha to ka book, ma'am. Or
Dili ay
studio.
file man to kuya Leo.
Okay.
Download,
Ay lumiki.
i-download lang to ninyo.
Ay, sige, ma'am.
Ah,
One lang
kung
unya, ma'am.
send na lang nako sa Messenger.
Yes, okay, ma'am.
Okay. Other questions?
Ay, wala. So,
Ma'am, kanang course activity na imong giingon ma'am ba nara na sa katong learning materials sa kuan ma'am? Prof track 4 na imong gisend? Sige, thank you ma'am.
ma'am, itong gipangkot, gaya ni mo, ma'am, nato sa soft copy ng imong gisend, ma'am.
Katong naka-PDF.
Data mining?
Mga command gani, ma'am.
Katong naka-PDF. Asa man to atong group chat diri Desa BSIS 3. Wala man. So you have the entire week to finish your course activity, which will also serve as your first exam. And if you don't have question, we will end na our meeting and we will see you again online next Monday. Okay, for our next topic.
Wala Wednesday, ma'am.
Wala na sa Wednesday karon kay exam week man ron. So you'll have the time to do your course activity the entire week. Pero I might send to you a schedule of our online meeting for naaday tay ko capstone.
Yes, ma'am.
Karon
Ano, ma'am?
oo.
Kaya nagkaon na siya ba?
So natay capstone. I will just send the schedule of our meeting for that. Okay, guys?
Okay, ma'am.
So, wala na tayo i-discuss. So, see you again. Again, see you. Hope to see you online next meeting. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
may pangutana, ma'am.
Unsa man? Ha?
Salamat, ma'am.
Uy, dili na by group.
By group.
Individual na. By group ra magyapon na ninyo pagbuhat. Pero individual nagpasa.
Yes, ma'am.
Grupo ring. Grupo ring, ma'am.
Oo,
Grupo
sige.
ring,
O, mailhan mo na ninyo og individual kay lahi mo og problem.
Ayaw, ma'am.
Oh, bye-bye.
ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.